one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I think that a lot of people are trying to figure this out, is what do you think Obama's, do you think we can expect from Obama foreign policy-wise when talking about U.S. and Middle East relations? Like, do you think he's really going to be like the diplomat that he kind of says he will be, or do you think
there's no evidence for it? I mean, the only evidence we have is what he said and what's on his website and the appointments that he's made. What he's said is that he won't say anything about this. He'll say things about anything else, but not this. So not about the invasion of Gaza and so on. You can't talk about that. In fact, he has said one thing, namely when he went to Israel last July, I guess, he visited Sderot, the town which is targeted by rockets. And he said that if my daughters were here, I would do anything to stop the rockets. And that he's repeated again as Israel is blasting people to smithereens in Gaza, that he would do anything to stop an attack on Sderot, period. That's all he said. On his website, it's just gushing love for Israel, nothing about the Palestinians. I think he has some vague reference to a Palestinian state somewhere, but everything is the crucial importance of defense of Israel. And he mentions Lebanon once, namely he takes pride in his having sponsored a resolution during Israel's invasion of Lebanon, saying that we should support Israel and Israel should be permitted to go on and kill as many people as it likes and so on and so forth. Those are his statements. His appointments are just pro-Israeli hawks, right down the line. Clinton, Dennis Ross, Dan Kretzer. Kretzer is the most moderate among them, and who is his Middle East advisor, was the co-author, or helper at least, in the speech that he gave to AIPAC, which broke records in obsequiousness. No one has ever gone that far. In fact, he went so far that his campaign had to publicly withdraw some of his statements. He stated that to AIPAC that Jerusalem must remain the undivided capital of Israel. I mean, first of all, it's radically opposed to international law. It's against Security Council resolutions that the U.S. supported. It's against U.S. policy. And it was so extreme that his campaign had to essentially retract it and say, well, the words didn't mean what he said. And that's what we know. So you can guess what you want. The sensible guess right now would be that it will probably be like the second Bush administration.
Because I remember, I think it was during the primaries, I was watching Go Meet the Press, and they were talking to Ralph Nader, and Nader was saying how he doesn't trust Obama's foreign policy. And he said the reason why is because when Obama was first starting out his political career, he was actually pro-Palestinian, and now he's become like this total pro-Israel apologist, and that just got me thinking, like...
I don't know that he was ever pro-Palestinian. He had a few Palestinian friends, but whatever that means. But he's been very cagey about not saying anything. In fact, his whole campaign was rather striking for its vacuity. It was what the press called soaring rhetoric, which they admired, about hope and change. But essentially, he presented himself as a kind of a blank slate on which he could write whatever he wanted. I don't see any particular hope in his other appointments either. Maybe the Secretary of Labor has got a good record, but if you run down the list of appointments, they're all pretty much the hawkish side, maybe centrist at most.
Do you think there's a particular reason why he would anoint all these hawks to his cabinet, and then but because before he would say like, oh, I'm going to be Mr. Diplomacy, I'm going to talk with our enemies, and then people were, you know.
But I mean, you know, if Bush had a third administration,
Yeah.
they'd be talking to the Iranians too, because it's insane not to.
Yeah.
But that's all. And he's maintained the position that we must be, with regard to Iran, his position is the United States must be an outlaw state in radical violation of international law.
Yeah.
That's what it means to say he's going to keep all options on the table.
Yeah.
The UN Charter, he's a lawyer, he knows. The UN Charter explicitly bans the threat of force. The American population is overwhelmingly opposed to the threat of force, as is the whole world. But he says we got to keep it open, so we must be an outlaw state. But he's willing to talk to them before he goes on to the use of force. With regard to Iraq, he's described, even by people on the left, as having had a principled opposition to the war. Well, that's simply false. His only critique of the war is that it was what he calls a strategic blunder. But, you know, that's no more principled than a Nazi general after Stalingrad who said the two-front war was a strategic blunder. In fact, you could read things like that in Pravda during the 1980s when commentators argued that it was a strategic blunder for the Russians to invade Afghanistan. We didn't call that a principled stand. It was totally unprincipled, in fact. And I find it pretty hard to find a principled stand on anything.